Welcome out to the shop. My name is Mark. Today I'm going to talk about the Jeep Cherokee XJ lift kits. Now, I have been running a Jeep Cherokee for over 20 years. Started out with the first one that I got while I was in college. I got rear-ended with it. The money from the insurance helped me fix the problems from the rear end and put a lift kit in it. So that started me down a path of fixing these things. That's honestly, it's never gone away. I've been fixing Cherokees for 20 years, and I'm almost done with it. I'm sick of it. No, I'm just, it's okay. It's fine. So, but what I've learned over the years through forums, Naxtra, and other Jeep clubs, there's different ways to lift your Jeep. And what I've developed is the best way to lift your Jeep. And I know you guys are just gonna hit that comment section and blow it up. Yeah, I mean, definitely do that because I'm wrong. I'm sure I'm wrong. But this is what I've found in my experience to be the best lift on a budget. And let me just say, on a budget. I'm going to say it again, on a budget. It's not the cheapest. I didn't say cheapest. I said on a budget. I didn't say necessarily the best, period. Because there might be better ones out there. Probably are, actually. It's on a budget. And what I mean by that is you can buy the components piece by piece and build this lift as you have the money over time. You can build one of the best lifts, I think. I mean, it's best riding, best performing, longest lasting, best components. This is what I feel like is the best lift for the Cherokee. And the use case for the lift, though, is mild off-roading and lots of on-road driving. Let's face it, if you're building a big rock buggy or a 100% off-road rig, a lot of the stuff I'm going to talk about doesn't apply. The reason for that is some of the components with lesser quality don't matter as much because you don't have the harmonics and the forces of speed with it, and rollovers and stuff like that. So the factory bushings is a big part of this lift. The reason for that is because the rubber will take a lot of the abuse that you need to take. That's why they did it from the factory. But it won't deteriorate very quickly. And it doesn't transmit a lot of the road noise into the Jeep. So the first main thing that you want to understand about lifting a Jeep Cherokee is there's just a few components to do that. You need springs. You need springs for the front, which are coil springs. You need springs for the back, which are leaf springs. In order to get this lift, you need to decide what height you want to go. And the big thing that you want to decide about height is you want to decide about tire size. I'm working backwards at this point because I know about what tire size I want to put on this Jeep, but I haven't decided wholly yet. We can come to that later. I started with the lift. The reason I started with the lift is because convenient factor. And that's one of the first things that you want to look for if you're going to build a lift on a budget is convenience. If you find a component that you can start with for a good price, buy it. Put it in the corner of the garage and start building the rest of the lift on that. I had a target height in mind of about 3 inches for this Jeep that I'm building for my daughter, which, by the way, if you're not watching that series, hit the subscribe button and which corner is it? I don't remember which corner, but check the corner. There's a playlist. I'm building a Jeep for my daughter, and it's getting out of hand, but we're at the lifting and putting it back together part, and that's worthwhile watching. The components that came to me first, very, very conveniently. I had a viewer reach out to me, a friend of a friend, and say, hey, I'm lifting he's converting his Jeep to a long arm kit, and I have these control arms. They're for a 3-inch lift. Do you want them? I said, yes. The reason I said yes is because they meet the criteria. So what is that? What does that mean? Rubber bushings. Factory, I guess they're called Clevite style rubber bushings. This configuration will give you a tight factory-like ride, but it will allow for flexibility, and there are some extra strengths and features like this one's have the bend in so that you can run factory offset wheels with a larger tire. The first component that I look for if I'm going to build it is going to be control arms. Typically, if I was buying control arms, I would buy adjustable control arms. Either adjustable upper or adjustable both. If you're going to buy one set of fixed and one set of adjustable, I would buy adjustable uppers and buy a fixed length lower that about meets or exceeds your lifted length. Now, there's a lot of calculators online about measuring how long you want the lower control arms to be. You can Google that and I'll let you do that. If you have any issues with it, hit me up in the comments and I'll help you with it. Starting out with factory bushings, adjustable control arms, or a fixed set of control arms with factory bushings that meet the lift height that you're targeting. From there, I had a friend that got me a good discount on some lift springs. I don't know what brand they are, but these are lift springs for a 3-inch lift. They were cheap. And that's the next rule that I have. Sometimes when you're building a lift on a budget, you need to decide whether you want to go cheap on it or you want to go expensive on it. And if you go cheap on it, you have to kind of consider you may have to replace that later, sooner rather than later. So these are 3-inch lift springs from an unknown brand. I don't know who made them. There's actually no label on them. I was not told. I was told they're 3-inch lift springs, and I trust the person that I bought them from. Flip side to that is you could go out and buy a set of leaf springs for your ride. So I like Iron Rock Off-Road has a set for about $500, $490, gets you a HD set of 3 to 3.5 inch lift leaf springs for your XJ. Those I consider to be the best components. They have upgraded secondary leafs that wrap the main bushing. They have extra leafs in them. And I have them on my other Jeep, and they ride fabulously, and they flex wonderfully. They're so far the best that I have had, and that's the Iron Rock ones. But in this case, I'm buying these ones. I spent about $60 on. Again, with a heavy discount from a friend of a friend. They're brand new springs for $60. I couldn't pass that up. If I have to replace them in 6 months or a year because they've sagged out, so be it. From there, I scrounged around and I found some 3-inch lift springs from a friend of mine. Mentioned to me that he had them, and I said, all right, let's grab those from him. If I hadn't gotten that deal, I probably would have bought some from Rusty's. Rusty's has 3-inch HD springs that I have found work very well for a mild off-road and heavy on-road use. The HDs are a little stiffer, and they can handle having a winch bumper or something like that on the front of the Jeep, and I have been very pleased with that. The prices for all of these components I will break down a little later in the video, so you can get an idea of how much we're going to spend building our own lift over time versus how much you might spend building one or buying a kit. From there, the big component, and I say big component because it's usually the one where I spend the most money on, is shocks. So if you ever go look at a lift kit, you're going to see shocks are included or shocks aren't included. And I typically, when I first did my first lift kit, I bought one that had everything included, and it was my first kit, so I really didn't know better. But it came with a set of shocks, and I fought some really bad ride quality issues on that thing for a long time, and it was so bad that I was considering getting rid of the Jeep as a car, as an on-road car. Actually, I did end up getting a daily driver until I found out just how much of an effect shocks have on the ride quality of a car. I should have known, but I was pretty new to off-roading at that point, and I thought the off-road shocks were the best ones, these nitros, blah, 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 blah. No. For my Jeep out front in the garage, I have Bilstein 5100s. I have had those on 4 Jeeps now, and I have them on my truck. They ride, they last, they're great. I have no complaints about the 5100s from Bilstein. For this Jeep right here, I actually wanted to try something that I've never tried before. I picked up a set of shocks, a Fox Shock 2.0s. I've never used the shocks before. They're considered some of the best in the industry, and so that's where I spent my money. I spent the bulk of the money for this lift on those shocks. And again, going back to the first Jeep, I probably would have just, when that lift kit arrived, if I knew then what I know now, I would have taken those nitro shocks that I got with the lift and I would have just chucked them in the trash, brand new. Chucked them, bought some new ones. That's a pretty key part about this being the best, not necessarily the cheapest. And again, fight me in the comments. I'll see you there. Anyway, from there, there's a few other things that you can get pretty cheap on Amazon. For example, extended bump stops for the front of the Jeep. These extend the bump stop by about 3 to 4 inches. I don't have an old set here, but basically get you really close to having a full-size bump stop for the front. You can do the same thing for the rear. Replace the ones that are on the Jeep with a larger one. Those were $40. The rears, I think, are around $40, $45. It's a very easy component to add, just one off. Instead of buying a kit, buy them separately. When you have 40 or 50 bucks, toss them in the corner with that set of springs or those control arms that you got on Facebook Marketplace and start building your lift that way. The next thing that I do, there's components that I always run. Every time. Because I do mildly off-road it, I run JKS sway bar disconnects. And that looks a little bit like this. So this is a extended adjustable sway bar link that you can take off of the Jeep and tie it up when you want to go off-roading. It has all rubber bushings, and when it's connected, you have factory-like stability in the front of your Jeep. When it's disconnected, you have a lot more flexibility. You can go off-roading. It really is the best disconnect that I have run so far. And that's why I've had them on 4 or 5 different Jeeps now. And they last really well.
Alternatively, you could install something like this, a sway bar drop kit.
That's the next part that I want to talk about, is how long do these components last? And that, in and of itself, is why I recommend doing it this way and building it a la carte, I'll call it, versus going out and buying a kit. You might be asking yourself, but I see all these kits online. I see Rusty's, they have an Adaleaf kit. I see Skyjacker has this kit, and it comes with all the control arms, and it has the braided brake lines and all this stuff. And that is one way of doing it, and I really don't want to talk down on that too much, but there are some quality issues and some longevity issues of those kits that I've seen that just steer me away from them. So again, if you're primarily off-road and you don't take it on the road and you really don't care about a little bit of slop, they might last a little better, because once they get a little bit loose, they don't really get worse. And when I say they, I mean this. All right. This is I believe it's a Skyjacker lift. It has poly bushings on the ends, and it has a metal sleeve. Now, if you have poly bushings and a metal sleeve, that's a really dense material, and it holds up pretty well to abuse. But what it doesn't do is it doesn't maintain tolerances. So I'm going to just drop that sleeve right out of there. And so if you look at this, it has a tremendous amount of play in that bushing. So if you have this and it's holding your axle, and your axle has the ability to do this, that's where death wobble comes from. This component has about 20,000 road miles on it. I don't know how much off-road miles, probably a little bit of off-road, I would guess, just based on the Jeep that it came from. This is an upper control arm for a Jeep TJ. This TJ had 304,000 road miles on it. 304,000. And that's what the bushings look like. Yeah, they're worn a little bit, but that's 300,000, and we didn't take this out because of those bushings. We took this out because the control arm length was not the right length. So I was fighting a vibration issue on that particular Jeep, and by the time I got done measuring everything, I said, let's put some adjustable control arms in there. We adjusted it, we got rid of the vibrations, and in that, we replaced the factory control arms. We actually replaced the bottom ones too, which were like these, but had poly bushings in them. So I have solved a lot of death wobble, pinion angle, a lot of problems in Jeeps by replacing the poly bushings from the cheap lift kits with a rubber Klebite bushing from a factory style arm. Factory style arm, a little bit longer, but specific for the use case. The next thing that those kits come with is shocks. Now this one has a name on it. You can read that. Again, I'm not going to talk bad about it, but this does not have a whole lot of miles on it. If you know anything about shocks, that's not how they're supposed to behave. So, where do you want to spend your money? Not there. These stinking roosters. Let's break down some of the costs. I know I've been talking about what's best. I'm going to read off some costs about how to build a lift. This one is going to be a little bit different. The overall that I have into this lift is probably going to be somewhere in the $1,200 to $1,300 range, and that's on the low end for what this is, because I've gotten some components for free and I've gotten some components at a very steep discount. I would typically probably expect to spend with these shocks. I would probably expect to spend somewhere around $1,500 to lift this with, again, what my experience has been the best riding, the best quality, the best lasting. So the Jeep that I have up front, if there wasn't giant rust holes in it, I wouldn't even hesitate to get in it and go 80 miles an hour down the highway and then go rock crawling. It's that reliable. It has rust holes in the frame that I have to fix, but the suspension, dialed. What does that lift kit mean? That's still a lot of money. You can get the Rusty's Add-A-Leaf kit for $1,100. That's cheaper, and it includes the shocks, and it hold on. We just talked about that. So if you wanted to go out and buy all the components for what I believe is the best one, it's actually going to cost you around $2,411. Budget part of that is you don't have to buy it all at once. You can look for sales and you can build that up, and you can save some money in some components. For example, these are the most expensive shocks. Well, probably the most expensive shocks in that list. You can go, they're probably around $800. You can go with some Bilsteins for around $500 or $600, or you can go with some cheaper ones for around $300 to $400. But you're going to want to be careful about, once you get down around the $300 range, that's going to be getting into the shocks that are going to not last very long. And you can buy the cheap ones and upgrade them later. So what do those components look like? Adjustable lower control arms, I like Iron Rock Off-Road. Adjustable upper control arms, I like Iron Rock Off-Road. Those are $250 for the lowers and $220 for the uppers. I may end up changing out these fixed with adjustables if I have angle problems. And you can save $20 there if you want to get a fixed lower and an adjustable upper or something along those lines. A track bar, you can get a cheap one off of Amazon. I have one about $100 in the one out front. It works pretty well. Or my preference, and actually there's one sitting right over there, from JKS Manufacturing. They make an adjustable track bar. The JKS one's about $200. The Amazon one's $100. They're both better than trying to make the factory one work. Rusty's 3-inch coils, those would cost about $120 or $190 for the Rusty's HD coils. You can save a little bit of money there if you buy some cheaper coils. I've had some that last and some that don't, but I like the ride quality of the Rusty's 3-inch or 3.5-inch HD coils. Daystar bumps about $40. Rear bumps about $50. A shackle kit, if you want to go a little bit more than the springs give you, you can get a shackle kit. Those are about $100. Spacer kit for the front if you want to get it a little bit more. So let's say you buy the 3.5-inch lift and you want to put a 3/4-inch spacer in the front, you can do that. That's about $50. The Iron Rock off-road leaf springs are about $490. Now the rest of these numbers don't include shipping, but the Iron Rock off-road leaf kit, I include shipping in that number because the leafs are $350, but shipping is $100 and some odd bucks, $120 or $130. So shipping really gets you on those. And like I had said about the shocks before, these ones are around $800. The Bilsteins are around $600, and the budget ones, which would be like a Rubicon Express or some of the Rustys, some of the branded ones, or even just a Monroe or whatever from your local parts store. Those are you can get them cheaper, like around $300. I haven't done that in a really long time because, well, reasons. A U-bolt kit for $40. The sway bar links that I was talking about are $180. A T-case drop kit, you want to build that yourself. Get 1-inch by 1-inch square tubing and drill holes in it, and put that in there. You can drop the transfer case yourself. The brake line hoses for the back, you want to get a brake line, a center brake line from a 1997 Dodge Ram pickup. I think Dakotas will do that too. It'll bolt right in and give you an extra 3 to 4 inches of droop in your rear axle. In the front, you want ones from a 1995 Jeep YJ, so that's the Jeep 95 Jeep Wrangler, the YJ. You want the left and the right. Those will get you up to about probably around 6 inches of lift on a Cherokee, and they pretty much just bolt into the same spot. And I don't recommend the stainless braided lines because the stainless braided lines, if the stainless ever gets compromised, the line is compromised. So the interior there is not as tough and rigid, or it relies on that stainless outer shell, and just a little bit of a rub on that, and then you have some braking problems. And the factory lines, again, going back to the longevity, they built those rubber lines to last 50, 60, 70,000 miles with no issues, and I have had 0 issues running the YJ lines on multiple Jeeps. So that's how that boils down. The breakdown of that, like I said, if you went out and bought every one of these components that I recommended as the best, and you spent all the money, it would be around $2,400. But you can buy them in increments of $500 or $300 or $200 as you have the money on your budget to build this up. Make the list of what you want to buy them over time, build it up, and or if you get most of them and you want to buy a cheaper component from somewhere else, so let's say you want to buy the $300 shocks instead of the $800 shocks, you can knock $500 off of that. You can get this. You can get started for $1,900 instead of $2,400, and then once you have the ride quality issues or you start having shock problems, you can come back and get a better shock later on. I don't recommend that, but hey. So that's what I have going on. I'm about ready to start slapping this stuff in this Jeep, and I hope that helps you decide whether you want to buy a lift kit or build one, because honestly, this is the way to go. But that's it for now. Hit me in the comments, fight me, let me know what you think. I've been doing this a while, and this is what I have found to be the best. So I would love to learn more. Maybe there's something else out there. And one more thing to say, It's not a one size fits all. We know this is not a long arm kit. We know this is not a rock crawler. This isn't a 3-link. This isn't going to win any flex. What are those called? Articulation competitions. This is all around high quality build, very good street performance, very good drivability with more ground clearance, and very good off-road ability. So that's all based on my experience. If you have a different one, let me know about it in the comments. That's it for now. Thanks for stopping out. See you guys next time.